Yes, welcome to Bikes of Rye. Today I'm test riding this Yamaha Tenere World Raid. My Tenere is actually in at Fitted Yamaha getting a service, my 2021 model. And so I'm curious to find out why this World Raid is worth almost £2,000 more brand new over my 2021 Tenere 700. So let's jump aboard. Horrible weather today, I apologise. We have a new TFT display over the previous model. Instead of an LCD display, we now got a colour TFT. Now what I'll do in this review is firstly take the World Raid for a road ride, see what it's saying, we'll stop off, have a quick walk around, and then at the end of the video I will give you a quick summary, so it will be worth sticking around to find out my opinion. And I think it's worth listening to my opinion because I at least own a Tenere, so this will be a great comparison video for you if you have a Tenere 700 and are considering potentially upgrading to the World Raid. Now, why has Yamaha released this particular World Raid, they call it, model? What's its purpose? Why did Yamaha feel the need to do this? Well, what Yamaha have done is they've listened to their customers of the previous model, listened to the complaints, and some of those complaints were around the suspension, and another one was around the fuel range, really. And so Yamaha, which I think need praising for, have gone ahead and listened to their customers and made significant changes. And what they are, I mean, it's quite clear and obvious to see that we have two filler caps here, so we now have a 23 litre tank of fuel up from 16 litres. And so we can now get an estimated 200 plus miles of range to a full tank. However, I'm not sure we need two filler caps. I mean, is that just, is that for looks? Is it just to look cool? Because what it does do, I mean, I know it's a bigger tank, but it's made the front of this bike a lot bigger than the previous model. And talking of bigger, this bike somehow weighs more. Now, claimed to weigh 220 kilograms, and I wonder if that's because they are taking into account the extra fuel capacity. So that'll be 220 kilograms wet, yeah, over, I think my Tenere is 205. Now the other thing I've noticed is they've taken their switchgear from their most recent models. The thing with my Tenere is the switchgear is the switchgear from bikes that are like 15 years old. I know it's a cheap bike in the adventure bike world, and I think that's what makes it so popular, is the fact that Yamaha were able to keep the costs so low. That's what's appealing about the Tenere. And you know what? I love the fact that what Yamaha have done is to make the Tenere better. They haven't gone ahead and gone, do you know what? Let's put a quick shifter on it. Let's put a 6-axis IMU. Let's put heated grips. Let's throw loads of tech at the bike. They've gone, nope, we're going to keep it basic, raw, and instead we're going to put the money to good use, the additional cost over the previous model, and we're going to upgrade the suspension. Now, one thing is for certain, and I really want to point this out, something that I've noticed, which is a big difference, and that is how much better this gearbox is. I don't know why, but on my Tenere the gearbox is so clunky. It's sometimes it gets stuck in gears, like if you go from third down to second, it gets stuck, and it's been like that ever since it's new. And I rode another Tenere and they were exactly the same. So my bike, you know, it doesn't have a fault. Yamaha, so, I mean, I don't know if others have complained about it. I haven't seen anyone complain about the clunky gearbox, but this one is a hell of a lot smoother. Also the power delivery. Now I want to say my Tenere has been tuned. I have a full Black Widow exhaust system on it, and whilst yes it's tuned, it doesn't necessarily gain power, but what it did do was made it ride a hell of a lot better, because the other thing with my Tenere was it was a bit ropey, the fueling was a bit poor, the throttle was an on-off switch. Yamaha have 100% improved on this model over the previous model. This throttle isn't an on-off switch. The power delivery is quite very linear. It seems like it's got a bit more go with less throttle input, so they've definitely changed the throttle maps there. I mean, we don't have rider modes, which is a good thing. I mean, that's what people don't want rider modes. They just want the throttle to do what it always does in any conditions, and that helps keep the cost down. Now the complaints that people have had, and actually I feel the same myself, I add to these complaints with regards to the suspension. And on my Tenere, I fear that the suspension is a bit of a weird one, because it seems to be on the soft side for the road, but it's got quite strong damping. So riding on the road, it's like if you hit speed bumps, the suspension isn't quick to adjust, it feels stiff at times, but then when you take it off road, the suspension feels really soft. And I think that's quite clever, because, you know, the challenge with Yamaha, the challenge that Yamaha have, is they're trying to make a bike good at both things, both being a road bike and also being an off-road bike. This is an adventure bike after all. Now what they've done with the suspension on the Raid over the previous model is they've stiffened up the damping. It's got stronger springs in it. We've also got an Olin steering damper here too, and I'm going to tell you now, I can absolutely notice a difference. Question though, why we need a steering damper? Is that for the off-road bit of the job? I mean, were people getting tank slappers riding off-road? Maybe they were. I mean, I would imagine you'd have to be going absolutely hell for leather on this off-road to get the front end to slap about on you. I'm surprised about that, but it's an Olin's damper nonetheless, so your additional almost £2,000 is being well spent on some premium extras. There's hardly any engine braking that the bike previously had. I've lost the engine braking on my Tenere because I've had it tuned and adjusted and all of that, and that was another annoyance of my Tenere when I got it new, is when you let go of the throttle, it was like you were hitting the brakes. Again, another thing that Yamaha have done on this that people I don't think are talking about maybe. I think this has actually got less engine braking than my tuned Tenere, interestingly, and that was improved. So yes, worthwhile doing, I think, on this, because what that will do is that just makes it a nicer road bike. It coasts for longer. Okay, you might lose a bit of engine braking if you're getting on it, because engine braking isn't a bad thing in some circumstances, but I think overall on this particular bike, it's an adventure bike and you want to go touring on it, I don't think you want that aggressive engine braking. You know, the suspension, to me, it feels like the bike is a lot more composed. Like you can feel those micro adjustments through the chassis. So there's little bumps, those little lumps in the road. You can feel the suspension working, but it's adjusting to those little cracks in the road, those little imperfections. It just seems that bit more stable, that bit more settled. Alright, let's have a quick walk around then, see what it looks like. It is very filthy, it's very wet, apologies Flittic Yamaha, but let's talk about the upgrades. Okay, you've got KYB front forks. This is where your money's being spent over the previous model. Let's have a closer look at the display. So it's still pretty simple, just looks that bit more prettier. It's in colour obviously. You've got your switch gear here. This is your Öhlins steering damper, and it's attached here. 2 filler caps now. I will say again, 23 litre tank. Quick spin around the bike, and if you look, it's very, very beefy now at the front end. It feels like a bigger bike, but it doesn't feel heavier. I think I've already mentioned that. What else to say? Yeah, the front mudguard here, I'm not 100% sure if that's standard now on the World Raid. We used to have mudguard here. You still kind of have a partial rear mudguard, but I do think that looks nicer. Looks more purposeful as an off-road machine. There is now an upgrade to the radiator guard there, so I think this should be standard on all bikes, to be honest with you. You've got some vents here on the side. This is like a camo finish. Can you see? I think you can. It's wet, sorry. But yeah, you can see the camo just about. We've got different indicators now. You still obviously have your very bright LED headlights. The 2 bulbs come on when you put the high beam on, and you've got your daytime runners here. What else to mention? We've got this Tenere 700 chain guard. Again, I'm not 100% if this is standard now on the World Raid. I'd have to double check. But yeah, cool, I like it. You've got little things like this, little finishes like this, it's quite nice. Another thing is the foot pegs, so they're a lot chunkier, and I believe this seat is different. Well, I know it's changed here, but actually it's a lot softer. My one is super hard. Another complaint of mine, I get a sore bum. I mean, I've done 300 to 400 miles in one day on it, and my bum, my gosh, was it sore. But yeah, that looks like it feels a lot softer when I'm riding it anyway. Okay, quick summary then. What do I think to the World Raid over my very own 2021 Tenere 700? Well, look, I think it's important to say that whilst the most obvious changes have been made to the fuel range and suspension, there is in fact quite a few other noticeable improvements going on beneath the surface. But the suspension is quite frankly the huge upgrade. That is where the bulk of your extra cash is going, and rightly so. Great suspension doesn't come cheap, especially when it comes to off-road capable bikes. Is the World Raid a better bike over the base model Tenere 700? Well, that is subjective, because weirdly I'm going to say that I love how rough around the edges my Tenere 700 is. It somehow adds to its character, and it can get away with it. Though that said, yes, the World Raid, at least to me, feels to be a more compliant and capable adventure bike over the base model. It also somehow feels a lot more special to ride too, partly because you now feel like you're on a Dakar bike with the dual filler caps, but also because ultimately it feels and looks like a more modern premium bike. Is it worth £1,900 more though? That is debatable, but what I would say is that I think Yamaha didn't ever expect the Tenere 700 to be as popular as it is, and so demand of course drives up the asking price, and so I guess Yamaha have used the World Raid as a way to stick on a couple of extra pennies without you really noticing. However, it does mean it is arguably no longer competitively priced. Overall though, the World Raid is of course a superb adventure bike. Yamaha have taken a great recipe and sprinkled in a few worthwhile ingredients that don't then spoil the bike. Riding the World Raid also reinforced to me just how damn good the Yamaha Tenere is. There is something just that little unique and special about it. Anyhow, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more from me, then please check out this suggested video on your screen now. And with that said, I hope to see you on another one very soon. Thanks for watching. See you later.